Hello students, today we will be discussing Nyaya philosophy again in continuation to inference. As you know that we have said in the previous classes that inference is a second source of valid knowledge according to Nyaya philosophy. For them to have an inference we need a Vyapti relation, and what is a Vyapti relation? They said that Vyapti relation is a universal, concomitant and invariable relation between Hetu and Sadhya, between major term and middle term, and in any kind of inference that you find indispensably the Vyapti relation as such. Therefore, Vyapti relation plays an important role in case of an inference. Further, we said that Hetu are of 5 types, and how Hetu plays both positively and negatively roles to have an inferential knowledge. We also discussed all this in details. In today's class, we will be discussing the grounds of Anumana, the grounds of inferential knowledge. What are the grounds for having an Anumana or inferential knowledge? According to Nyaya, there are 2 grounds for an inferential knowledge. One is logical ground, another is psychological ground. A logical ground for them is nothing but a Vyapti relation. They said that if you understand the Vyapti relation, then you know that the logical ground of having an inferential knowledge. Then further also they discussed the logical ground. Apart from the logical ground, there is another ground that we find to have an inferential knowledge is known as psychological ground, or they said that pakhyata. So now we will discuss what is first logical ground, then we will further discuss what is the psychological ground to have an inferential knowledge which is known as a valid pramana according to Nyaya philosophy. There are 2 grounds, as I said to you, there are logical and psychological. Vyapti is considered as a logical ground of Anumana or inferences, because as you know that the Vyapti relation is an indispensable relation to have an inferential knowledge, and they explain Vyapti relation is an invariable, universal and concomitant relation between Hetu and Sadhya, between the middle term and the major term. Sadhya stands for major term and Hetu stands for middle term. The middle term also known as Linga, you can call it Hetu, Linga or middle term. So anything you call it, you should constantly keep the same word for whole explanation. Otherwise sometimes if you say Hetu, sometimes if you say Linga, that means it will be a confusing state. Whatever word you want to use for a particular term for middle term, say you want to use the linga as a middle term, go on use the term uniformly while answering a particular question. So stick to that so that it won't be confused neither to nor to the evaluators. Now further I said that Vyapti relation is between 2 terms, one is middle term and another is major term. What they are saying that by the help of Vyapti relation we establish Sadhya in Pakhya. Sadhya is a major term and Pakhya is the minor term. Here I must tell you that if you have listened to me in the last class and also you have understood what is an inferential knowledge, I said that whenever I will refer to the smoke and fire relation, that how the smoke and fire are closely related with each other for having a Vyapti relation, and what is meant by middle term, what is meant by major term and what is meant by minor term. We have also explained in relation to fire and smoke and the hill. We said that fire is a major term, hill is the minor term and the smoke is the middle term. The argument in this way it is proposed that the hill is smoky, wherever smoky is fiery, that means wherever there is smoke there is fire, and therefore I conclude or we conclude that therefore the hill is fiery, or you can find fire in the hill. So in this way you find there are 3 propositions involved to have an inferential knowledge. So what they are saying that it is because of the Vyapti relation we establish Sadhya. Sadhya is a fire on the hill, this is the Pakhya. Therefore I said my third point, by the help of Vyapti relation we establish Sadhya in Pakhya. Vyapti is a relation between Hetu and Sadhya, this is repeatedly I said, and further I am saying that it is of 2 types. Vyapti are of 2 types, one is Samavyapti, another is Asamavyapti. Samavyapti means there are two sides relation. That means by seeing a smoke you can infer fire, and by seeing the fire you can also infer smoke. So therefore, while inferring by seeing one to another, you can also inversely infer the situation. That is called samavyapti. Asamavyapti is also known as visamavyapti. That means we can only infer from one to another side, but inversely we cannot do so. Therefore, they said that it is only one way traffic, that asamavyapti. However, in case of samavyapti, you find in both sides we can infer. Now let us see how Nyayakas explain it. I will give an example before moving to the further slide. In case of samavyapti, it is said in this way: if you know that what is the effect, you know that where it comes from. That means if you know the curd, you know that certainly it comes from milk, and if you know that milk, you know that after such and such condition it will transform to the curd. So in both sides you can find the relation, that is samavyapti. There are many cases also there that you find in day to day activities. For example, if you see a mango, a mixture of yellow and red color, and neat and clean, and it looks very good. Once you take a slice of that mango and you find tasty. Now this knowledge helps you to infer that in all the cases whenever that kind of mango appears, you say that the taste of that mango will be sweet. And sometimes somebody has given a slice of a mango, and if you eat it and find that the taste is sweet, you immediately infer that this slice maybe belongs to that particular mango, having this red and yellow color mixture and having neat and clean. So in this way you find both side of relation in case of samavyapti. Asamavyapti, it is only one side of relation. For example, if I say that men are mortal, that means if there are men, they can be mortal or they will be dead after some time. But inversely I cannot say that all mortal beings are men, because there are many other creatures also, they after a certain time they died, after a certain time they extinct. So therefore here we have to go from one side, certainly not in an inverse side. Now we will see how exactly Nyayakas explains about this. Now I hope you have understood these two concepts, samavyapti and asamavyapti, with my examples. Now we will see what is Nyayakas interpretation in case of samavyapti and asamavyapti. In case of samavyapti, what Nyayakas said that it is an equivalent concomitance relation between the two terms Hetu and Sadhya. That means these two terms Hetu and Sadhya, the smoke and fire, should be invariably related such a manner that if you can perceive one thing, immediately you can infer other things in any side from any corner. That means if you can see there is smoke in one side, immediately you can infer fire, and if you see the fire, you can immediately infer the smoke, because they have a concomitance and invariable, inseparable and universally related with each other. That means there is no such instances where you have seen the smoke without fire or you have seen the fire without smoke. So this is the only condition. They said that because of this condition, it is an equivalent concomitance relation between these two terms, henceforth samavyapti works here, or samavyapti functions in this respect. Further they said we can argue from one to another and vice versa. We find the equal extension of these two terms. What is the equal extension? That means if you see the fire, equally you can infer with the evidence saying that there is a smoke, and if you see the smoke, equally this is extendable with same condition, you say that there may be a fire. So while seeing the fire you infer a smoke, and while seeing the smoke you can infer the fire. So therefore they said that it is two terms are coextensive, the equal extension of these two terms, and hence for that these two terms are coextensive, and we may infer either of them from the other. Further, that it is a universal proposition where subject and predicate distribute. Now you must understand what I mean here. As I said that Nyaya is a logicians, Indian logicians, or Nyaya system as a school, people consider as a logicians, because they consider three aspects in all cases while arguing on certain fact or an issue. The first one is psychological, the second one is logical, and the third one is philosophical. And whenever they talk about the inference, they refer to the Aristotelian concept of deductive inference. How these three propositions, three terms involved, and how these three proposition functions together, and how the conclusion supports to the given premises taken together. So, while referring their inferential knowledge to this deductive argument, they said that here you find minor term as a Pakya, major term as a Sadhya, and middle term is known as Hetu. Here you find, according to Aristotle, they said that there are 4 kinds of propositions. You find universal affirmative proposition, universal negative proposition, particular affirmative proposition, and particular negative propositions. If you go back, then you find that they said propositions are of 2 types based on quantity, that is universal and particular. Further, they said that propositions are divided into 2 based on the quality, that is affirmative and negative. Now mixture these 2, that means based on the quantity and quality you find propositions are of 4 types. One is universal affirmative, the second one is universal negative, and the third one is particular affirmative, and the fourth one is particular negative. The first one represents as all or stands as all, the second one stands universal negative stands as no, then particular affirmative stands as some, and the particular negative stands as some not. If I say that all men are mortal, that means this proposition belongs to a universal affirmative proposition. The predicate completely affirms the subject. So here you find the term all. If I say no human being is perfect, it is a universal negative proposition. If I say some cows are white, it is a particular affirmative proposition. If I say that some roses are not red in color, then it is a O proposition or particular negative propositions. Here some not you find. In this way, if you find that universal affirmative proposition, only subject part is distributed. What is distributed? The whole entire denotation has to be taken into the consideration. Then only this part is to be distributed. Aristotle said that there are 2 parts involved in a proposition, one is subject part, another is predicate part. The subject part is to be distributed in case of an universal affirmative proposition, and in case of universal negative proposition, the subject and predicate both part has to be distributed. In case of particular affirmative proposition, neither subject nor predicate is distributed. But in case of O propositions or in case of particular negative propositions, you find the predicate part is distributed. So therefore, respectively, in case of A proposition or a universal affirmative proposition, you find subject part is distributed. In case of a universal negative or E proposition, you find both subject and predicate part are distributed. In case of particular affirmative proposition or I proposition, you find neither subject nor predicate is distributed. In case of particular negative proposition, you find that predicate part is distributed. So this is the way you find the term get distributed. What the said Nyaya was that in case of Samavyapti, since it is a 2-side traffic, by seeing one side you can infer to other side, and also by seeing the other side you can infer to this side. So since it is a 2-way traffic, what they said is that it is an universal proposition where subject and predicate has to be distributed. Universal means both universal affirmative and universal negative. So therefore you find they said it would correspond to the Western logic as UA stands for universal affirmative and UN stands for universal negative propositions. There is a Samavyapti between cause and effect and substance and attribute. What they mean is that by seeing the effect you can infer to the cause, and by seeing the cause you can infer into the effect. The example I have given, milk and curd. Further I have given an example of mango and its quality test, sweet. Said that by seeing the substance mango you can infer its quality or taste, and in other way by having the taste of that slice of a mango you can infer to the mango itself. So therefore Samavyapti operates in both sides, from one side as well as from the other side. So now we will see that what is the example given by Nyaya in case of Samavyapti. They said that we may infer the cause from the effect and the substance from the attribute and vice versa. The example they have given that all rational beings are men. Now you consider this is a sentence. If you say that all men are rational beings, then it is correct, equally correct. That means by seeing the rational being you can say that these are men, and by seeing the men immediately you can infer they are rational being. So that means both sides you can infer. Second example they have given, whatever is produced is non-eternal. Anything can be produced in this earth, it will destroy, therefore it is not eternal. And further you can also make a statement saying that whatever is non-eternal is produced. So that means in both sides you can have a inferences. So this is called a samavyapti. And now we will be seeing what is asamavyapti. As I said, asamavyapti means only one side we can infer it, not in reverse way. Also example I have given, if I say that all men are mortal, I cannot say that all mortals are men, because there are many animals, reptiles, insects also the mortality, they have the mortality. Therefore only from one side we can have an inference, not from other side. What Nyaya has explained here is that in this case, in case of asamavyapti, we can argue only from one side. It is a relation of non-equivalent concomitance between the two terms. The two terms means Hetu and Sadhya. If you say fire and smoke, that is an invariable relation. So here you find samavyapti. But in this case, in case of asamavyapti, he is saying that inference is possible, but it is from one side, not in the reverse side. Therefore it is a non-equivalent concomitance relation between Hetu and Sadhya. Now continuing further, they said that it is an unequal extension between the two terms. Equal extension means by seeing one you can infer others, and in case of asamavyapti it is unequal extension. That means by seeing one you can infer others, however by seeing the others you cannot infer that one. An example I say, by perceiving x you can infer y, however by perceiving y you cannot infer x. So this is the understanding of asamavyapti relation as a logical ground for having an inferential knowledge. They said that it is not a coextensive, because we may infer from one to another but not inversely. It corresponds to the Western logic universal affirmative propositions only, because in case of a universal affirmative proposition you find the subject part is distributed, not both subject and predicate part. In case of samavyapti he said that universal proposition, that means it may be universal affirmative and universal negative together. So therefore you find subject and predicate part is distributed. But here you find asamavyapti refers to, in Western logic, only universal affirmative proposition where only subject part is distributed. So now I hope that you are now clear what is samavyapti relation, what is asamavyapti relation to have an inferential knowledge. The example that I have given, the same example I have written here. So therefore now you can understand what is vyapti relation and how vyapti relation is a logical ground for having an inferential knowledge. In addition to that, you know that there are two types of vyapti, one is samavyapti, the another one is asamavyapti or visamavyapti. In case of samavyapti you find two sides relation, that means by seeing the one you can infer the other, and by seeing the other you can infer the priority one. But in case of asamavyapti, by perceiving x you can infer to y, however by perceiving y you cannot infer to x. So this is the way you have to understand samavyapti and asamavyapti. Further they said vyapti relation to be explained in this way, it is an universal, invariable, unconditional and concomitant relation between Hetu and Sadhya. If any one of the component will be missing, then this relation cannot be a vyapti relation. So therefore to have a vyapti relation we must find that Hetu and Sadhya will be having the universal relation, invariable relation, unconditional and concomitant relation, and it should be find always. If this is so, then based on this relation you can infer the situation. Vyapti therefore is a logical condition of inference, may be defined either positively or negatively. Now we find how this vyapti relation can be explained both positively and negatively. As you know that Nyaya has also defined something, explained something negatively. For example, if I say this is my pen, according to Nyaya they say that this pen is not chair, this pen is not table, this pen is not tree, this pen is not duster. So they try to eliminate, through the elimination process they try to conclude on a certain issue, they try to establish certain fact, or they try to argue on a certain existence of an object. So now we will see that how this vyapti relation can be found both positively and negatively, and how it becomes the ground, a logical ground for having an inferential knowledge. Now, Vyapti relation is between two terms. As you know that it is a Hetu and Sadhya, it is based on the four factors. One is Annoya, the second one is Vyatireka, the third one is Piyodarsana, and the fourth one is Tarka. In case of Annoya, you find it is an affirmative inference. This is based on universal affirmative proposition. US stands for here universal affirmative proposition. It is a permanent relation between this Hetu and Sadhya. In this case, we perceive these two things together always. That means what Annoya try to express is that in all the cases this Hetu and Sadhya should be positively found, or if in any instances you find smoke and never find fire, then the Vyapti relation never exists, and henceforth whatever you inference that on the hill there is a fire, that will be wrong or invalid knowledge. So therefore they say that Vyapti can be explained in positive sense. That means in all the instances that you have seen so far or experienced so far, you find that fire and smoke, Hetu and Sadhya, will be find together in all the places. This is the features states by Annoya. Now the second one is Vyatireka. Vyatireka contrasts to Annoya. It negatively says that there should not be any such cases where you find fire without smoke or you find smoke without fire. That means negatively establishing some fact, the invariable fact between these two terms, Hetu and Sadhya. And if you can negatively establish that there would not be any such condition where fire and smoke can be separated, and you say that fire exists without smoke and smoke exists without fire. So this is also a negatively establishing a condition where it helps us to infer some kind of object which turns into a valid one. Now in Annoya also, if you find, I have given an example, say that whatever smoky is fiery. So therefore you find all M is P. M here stands for as a middle term and P stands for the major term. In reference to the Nyaya logicians, you find M as a middle term stands for Hetu and P as a major term stands for Sadhya. Now we will see how Vyatireka they have explained. In case of Vyatireka, as I say that it is a negative inference. This is based on universal negative propositions. In case of Annoya, you find it refers to universal affirmative proposition where subject part is distributed. But here he is saying that it is a universal negative proposition. It corresponds or based on the universal negative proposition. It contradicts to Annoya. The process of contradicting means the subject of the Anvaya will be placed in the predicate of the Vyatireka in a contradiction form, and also the predicate of the Anvaya contradicts and placed in the subject form of Vyatireka. So that means there I have given all M is P. So here you find all not P is not M, because the P what you find here is subject part which is negated here in Vyatireka, you find that is positively in case of Annoya. The explanation I have given in this way: contradict the predicate part of the Annoya and placed in the subject part of Vyatireka, and contradict the subject part of the Annoya and placed in the predicate part of Vyatireka. Example I have said, whatever is not fiery is not smoky. That means all not P is not M. What they say is that there should not be any such cases where you find one without the other. So this is one of the conditions has to be satisfied with the Vyapti relation to have an inferential knowledge. The third point, they said that Piyodarsana, that means it implies the repeated observation of two terms together. Before inferring, by seeing the smoke you are inferring that there may be a fire on the hill. He is saying that you can infer only when in your past you have observed many of the situations positively. He is saying that constant observation you have done in your past, therefore you accumulate the information and find that these major term and minor term are closely, invariably, inseparably related. Henceforth you are inferring without not even seeing fire over there on the hill. Without seeing even fire over there, by just seeing a smoke you can infer the situation that there may be a fire on the hill. In case of tarka, tarka stands for as a hypothetical reasoning or hypothetical argument. That means in a hypothetical basis you argue it. There are many situations, if you cannot argue properly, the whole conclusion will be invalid, because your argument is not systematic, your argument does not follow the logicality. Therefore, they said that it is needed, the tarka or the hypothetical argument or hypothetical reasoning is needed for proving the validity of arguments. It helps or assists for removing the doubt of the argument of the fact. That means if you can able to argue on a particular fact in a logical and coherent way, your argument will be valid. And if your argument is not valid, then you find that your argument somewhere is not logical. Consisting this concept or holding this concept, Nyaya said that this tarka or the hypothetical argument helps for removing the doubts of the argument or the fact. Further, they said wherever there is a doubt, it is arrested by tarka or hypothetical argument. You said that if something is wrong in your conclusion, you say that your argument may not be followed properly, logically or sequentially. Therefore, they say that if there is no Vyapta relation as such, then the fallacy will arise known as petitio principii. That means if there will be no Vyapta relation where Hetu and Sadhya will be concomitantly, universally, invariably related with each other, the inference won't be possible. Again you go back to that circle, saying that you have perceived the smoke, you cannot infer the situation. Therefore, the fallacy known as petitio principii, which is in a circle. Therefore, you find that the importance of logical grounds to have an inferential knowledge according to Nyaya systems. Now we will see the psychological grounds for having an inferential knowledge. What is the psychology ground? When I say the psychology, something comes to your mind, that is mental exercises. Now we will see how this really mental exercise stands as a ground to have an inferential knowledge. And it is not limited to that. Whatever knowledge we have through the inference, it should be a valid knowledge. That means inference as a pramana certainly leads to prama. Now we will see how psychological ground helps to have an inferential knowledge. They said that pakhyata is considered as the psychological ground of inference. It is primarily concerned with the possibility of inferences. Again, here you find there is a relation between Hetu and Sadhya. And however, the focused here is that in case of psychological ground, the more concern over here the relation between pakhya and Hetu, heel and smoke. That means once you see the smoke over there, then you have anxiety to infer certain situation, and anxiety comes because of your mental exercises. And because of your mental exercise, you try to retrieve all the past information what you had seen, both positively and negatively. In case of fire and smoke, what you have seen in the past, how fire and smoke is related in various evidences, all things you can accumulate or retrieve through your memory. So therefore, in case of psychological ground, the most important part is you find pakhya and Hetu to be related, or there is a relation between Hetu and pakhya. Further, they said in this case we want to infer something on the minor term. Minor term means hail. By seeing the smoke, now you want to infer something on the hill. So for that, there are two conditions to be involved. One is you are not certain whether there is a fire or not, lack of certainty. And the second one is you must have an anxiety or desire to infer certain situations. There are many situations you have seen something, perceived something, but you don't have any anxiety, desire or inclination to infer something. There inference doesn't work. Because to have an anxiety, to have an inferential knowledge, you try to bring all your past evidences, experiences, and based on that past experiences, which is known as Vyapta relation, you try to impose on the object whether your inferential knowledge will be correct or not based on all these functions together, the mental functions. Therefore, Prachina has said that there are two conditions involved for having pakhyata. One is lack of certainty, another is desire to infer. For example, if you show me a pen, I will just see it, I say that okay, this is a pen, and further I don't want to infer anything on it. That means here the inferential knowledge cannot work, won't function. But if I have a desire to know further about that pen, and whatever thing I infer, I say that this pen may be good. Whenever you write with this pen, it is very smooth because of my earlier experiences, because of the earlier evidences that I have gathered in the form of experience, and it will be retrieved from my memory and imposed on that object. So therefore, by seeing the dot pen, I can infer the situation that this pen writes smoothly. So here he is saying that there are two conditions invariably related. One is lack of certainty, and the cognizer who is trying to infer certain situation, he or she must have a desire to cognize that object through the inferential knowledge. Now further they said that there are three conditions where inferential knowledge is possible based on the psychological grounds. One is absence of certainty, desire to infer, and the second one is absence of certainty and absence of desire, and the third one is presence of certainty and presence of desire. We will discuss. Before that, we will just see how other points Nyaya made it. Nyaya said Pakhyata consists in the presence of doubt about the Sadhya. He is saying that it is a psychological ground, you have a doubt whether it is right or it is correct for you to infer that fire on the hill or not. By seeing the smoke, whether it is correct from your side, from your point of view, to infer whether there is a fire exists on the hill or not. So here the doubt really arises. What they are saying is that doubt never limits to only a particular field, saying that you have to doubt only without searching for its further truth. He is saying that doubt does not only imply the absence of certain knowledge about something, but also positive desire or will to know it. That means just having a doubt is not sufficient enough. You must have a desire, you must have a will to know something about it. Then only the inferential knowledge will work here as a psychological ground. Further they said that thus doubt as a condition of inference involves both the absence of certainty about something and the desire to have certain knowledge about that thing. First you say see a smoke, now this is certain for you. Now based on the smoke, now you immediately infer because you have seen the past experience, and after inferring also you are not sure because you are in doubt, because you are not seeing the fire with the smoke. He is saying that since you are in doubt and anxiety to infer the situation, you could able to do that, and you could able to infer the situation because of your past experience retrieved through the memory and impose on that object. And you know that how this Vyapti relation functions here between Hetu and Sadhya. So therefore, in these are the conditions where psychological ground plays a role to have an inference. They said that modern Nyayikas said that inference is caused by three possible conditions. These are, I have already discussed with you, that absence of certainty plus desire to infer. Now I will give an example which helps to understand that absence of certainty and you have a desire to infer the situation, and how here psychological ground plays a role to have an inferential knowledge which will be known as a valid knowledge or prama. For example, one in a fine morning you get up from the bed and go for a walk. You see that the whole road is full of leaf, both dried leaf as well as green leaf. Further you find there are drop of water on the leaf. Then once you will go further walk, after certain point you find that there are few places water are floated, few holes are filled with water. Then once you go on you find that further there is some mud. Then you may think that this is because the cause of the monkey family, monkey might be doing that. But however, you have a desire to infer. You infer that maybe yesterday there is a rain, because of this all the situation appears in the morning. Here it is a lack of certainty, you are not sure about, saying that absence of certainty, who has done it. Then you have inferred the situation, then you thought that it may be a monkey family, but later you conclude that because of your previous experiences of rainwater, and after rain what the situation happens, based on that you infer the situation that you said that maybe yesterday night there was a rain, as a result in the morning it is found in this way, the situation are in this way. So here you find that your inferential knowledge, it is based on this two factors. One is absence of certainty and the second one is you have a desire to infer. The second point they said that absence of certainty plus absence of desire In that case also we can infer certain situation. Nyaya has explained, suppose you know that there is a lightning and after that thunder. When there is a lightning, you are not sure about it because it just immediately disappears. You may think that maybe because of your some eyesight problem or some immediately the light reflect on your eye, you are seeing that. However, this is not correct. Therefore, it is an absence of certainty. Once there is a lightning in the sky, you are not sure about it, and after that thunder comes, you need to infer it because of the association between lightning and thunder. In your previous experience, you need to infer that. Without inferring it, things comes automatically. So here also inferential knowledge works. What they said is that there are many cases where you see the lightning but you cannot hear the thunder. That means there may be a mild thunder where the sounds is not audible to us. So in this case also inferential knowledge possible, because here you find absence of certainty and absence of desire. The third point, they said the presence of certainty and the presence of desire. That means the example I will give which helps you to understand. According to Descartes, he is saying that I think therefore I exist. When you say that I think, that means a certainty. Thinking being, you are a thinking being, is a certain. There is a doubt further arises whether this thinking being leads to any kind of certainty of your existence or not. So since there is anxiety, since there is a desire comes within you, therefore you try to infer of your existence. Therefore the famous sentences made by Descartes saying that I think therefore I exist. Here you infer the situation about your existence. Here you find both in case presence in certainty and also your presence of desire for helping us to have an inferential knowledge. Here you find the knowledge is a kind of psychological ground. So in this case, these three conditions where psychological grounds helps the cognizer to infer a certain situation, and the inference knowledge here will be termed as a valid knowledge. But only one condition where inferential knowledge is not possible, that is the presence of certainty but you have not any desire to infer. When some object exists before you but after that you do not want to infer something, that means you just see the smoke on the hill and after that you do not have any desire to infer whether there is a fire exists or whether there is a fire does not exist there, nothing of this sort. Just you see something, ends there. You have knowledge of that object where your sense organs contacts, and after that your knowledge will stops there. This is so, then inferential knowledge does not work here. So therefore a cognizer must have a desire to infer certain things, then only inferential knowledge to be considered as a valid knowledge or a pramana to have a prama. Further they said that if every inferences must involve at least 3 steps. What are the 3 steps? The first step is, as you know, the hill is smoky, so minor term and the middle term. Then you find wherever fire there is a smoke, here you find the major term and middle term, and the last one you find there is a relation between pakhya and sadhya, major term and minor term. He is saying that these 3 steps are involved to have an inferences. If these are the 3 steps, what is the real cause or karana or nimitta cause or the proximate cause for having an inferential knowledge? Now you find different systems, different scholars, even now among them they have given their different opinion, and however they have established their opinion. If you see Prachina now, they said that linga or hetu or middle term is the karana or is the proximate cause for having an inferential knowledge. However, you find Mimamsikas and Vedantins, they said that it is not linga, it is a vyapta relation, because whatever we infer based on the vyapta relation, if we have not seen in our past experiences that how this sadhya and hetu closely related in case of universal, concomitant, invariable, indispensable relation, then we could not able to reach to a situation or a position where we could able to infer that there is a fire on the hill. Therefore they said that it is a vyapta relation. Mimamsikas and Vedantins say that it is a vyapta relation which helps us to infer something by perceiving something. So therefore, for them Vyapti is the Karana or the Nimitta cause to have an inferential knowledge. Further, you find Nabya Nyaya said that it is a Vyapta relation. Nabya Nyaya also agreed, saying that Vyapta relation is an rudimentary, is a principal cause for having an inferential knowledge. Without Vyapta relation, no one can have any kind of inferential knowledge. The later Nabya Nayakas said that it is a Tritiya Linga Paramarsa. That means the middle term has to be perceived 3 times. If this is the case, then only the inferential knowledge will be turned into a valid knowledge. Otherwise, at any such cases, the inferential knowledge cannot be treated as a valid knowledge. Now, let us see what they mean by Tritiya Linga Paramarsa. They said that it is not 3 propositions enough to have an inferential knowledge. We need at least 5 propositions to have an inferential knowledge. Now, let us see how they consider the 5 propositions as an inferential knowledge and how they explain that this Tritiya Linga Paramarsa is an important aspect or an proximate cause to have an inferential knowledge. Now, Tritiya Linga Paramarsa means the linga has to be observed 3 times. The example I have given here, I said that the hill is fiery because of smoke. Further, I said the third sentence, whatever smoky is fiery, so the hill is smoky, therefore the hill is fiery. You find that either of the 2, either first 2 or the last 2, if you just delete it, still the inferential knowledge maintains its own standpoint, having the Vyapti relation. However, the later Nabya Nyaya said that we need this 5 kind of proposition, because the first case where the Pakhya and fire related, when you say that the character of the Pakhya is related with the Sadhya, fire, you find that Hetu relation, because you infer that there is a fire on the hill because of the smoke. Here smoke is the middle term or a Hetu. The first time you have seen that, first time the Hetu appears. In the second time he said that there is an invariable relation you have seen in your past. In your past, in many occasions you find that where there is a lamp is burning, you find there is a fire and smoke. Wherever there is a candlelight, you find there is a fire and smoke. Wherever something is burnt, some wooden is burnt, you find that there is a fire as well as smoke. So all these issues together, here I also find smoke and fire related with each other. That means it is the second time where smoke has to be observed or smoke is to be perceived. Now 2 times you can perceive linga. The third time they are saying that the Hetu is found in relation to the minor term. Lastly, you conclude that because of this I am inferring fire on the hill. So therefore they explain there are 3 times a Hetu is to be observed. As a result, this Tritiya Linga Paramarsa play a nimitta cause or proximate cause to have an inferential knowledge. I repeat, in the first case when you have observed the Hetu, when you see a smoke on a hill, and the second time you observe the Hetu when the smoke and fire related with each other invariably with Vyapti relation in your past experiences. The third one, when you infer the fire on the hill, there you find that smoke is there. So in this way they have explained that 3 times the Hetu is to be observed or perceived, then only the inferential knowledge will be valid. Otherwise, in any such cases, inferential knowledge may not be a valid knowledge or prama. So this is the way logical and psychological ground help to have an inferential knowledge. Thank you. So I will just brief it out what I have said so far. I said that logical and psychological grounds for having an inferential knowledge. In case of logical ground, we said that how Vyapti relation is important. While explaining Vyapti relation, we said that there are 2 types of Vyapti relation. One is Samavyapti, another is Asamavyapti. In case of Samavyapti, we said that it is a 2-way traffic. By seeing one, you can infer others, and by seeing the other, you can infer the earlier one. But in case of Asamavyapti, which is known as Visamavyapti, in this case you find only one-side relation. That means by perceiving x, you can infer to y. However, by perceiving y, you cannot infer to x. And after that, we discussed that how really that positively and negatively Vyapti can be explained, that Annaya, Vyatira, Kapya, Darsana and Tarka. And after that we have discussed how the psychological ground is responsible for having an inferential knowledge. While discussing the psychological grounds, we have discussed that how this Hetu and the minor term has related with each other. There we have said that there are two conditions involved. One is lack of certainty, and the cognizer has a desire to infer, then only inferential knowledge is possible. Further we said that there are three conditions where psychological grounds helps to have an inferential knowledge. One is absence of certainty, you have a desire to infer. Then we said that then you have absence of certainty and absence of desire. Further we said that presence of certainty and presence of desire. In three conditions psychological grounds helps to have an inferential knowledge. Further we said that only one condition where inferential knowledge not supported by the psychological grounds, or inferential knowledge is not possible, that is the presence of certainty but absence of desire to have further inferential knowledge. You do not have a desire to infer, and this is the psychological ground. We have discussed all this. Thank you so much.